Welcome to another episode of Entrepreneur Insider. My name is Mike Koenigs. Today, I am with CEO and founder of Kaufman Development and creator of the Gravity Project, Brett Kaufman. Now today we're going to be talking about how to turn your life experience into a transformational business opportunity for you and the employees you affect. So one of the things that's really fascinating about Brett is he has gone through an amazing life journey that he's been able to turn into an extremely creative facility, and that's the one that we're actually recording in today. It's called the Gravity Project. You're also going to learn about how he thinks and how he has gone about developing this incredible property and what he's doing as a podcaster and as a business executive coach and an investor too. So welcome.
Thank you.
It's nice to be here at your place, the Gravity Project.
Awesome to have you here, Mike. I always love having you in Columbus and spending time with you and being in the studio. It's great. Yeah,
I'm really impressed. Great job. So maybe for people who don't know who Brett Kaufman is, who are you? What's your background? Why don't you give us your brief commercial?
Sure. Yeah, I guess for the past 20 years, I've been predominantly a real estate developer. And so as you mentioned in the intro, we've been building communities with Kaufman Development since 2011 that were really focused on enhancing the human experience, bringing people closer to their passions, closer to each other, and allowing them to kind of live into the things that really honor who they truly are. So that's predominantly what I've been doing. In recent times, we're here at Gravity, which is our latest and fullest expression of that work. But I've also been really passionate about how we extend this belief around upgrading the human experience into other areas. So we're starting new companies, we're investing in entrepreneurs, we're really trying to see how we can use our experience to help people in their own journeys.
Right. Well, I think this would be a great time to talk about the Gravity Project, because the first impression is this is not a place you'd normally think of as being a Columbus, Ohio facility. You've got this amazing mural outside the building, lots of apartments, balanced work life. You've got meditation rooms, areas for mental health, restaurant. I mean, this is the kind of place I'd love to live in because you feel different when you're here. But what's the mission and the philosophy behind Gravity?
Yeah, like I said, it's really about trying to honor what we say is expression, impact, and well-being, really all aimed at how we make human beings have a better experience in life, how we make the community that we're involved in this case, Franklinton and Columbus and the world around us, a better place. And what we're doing is we're bringing in kind of all the things that we're passionate about that we believe also touch other people, that inspire other people. So part of it is in the design and the art, the murals, but it's also really in the events, the programs, the education, the opportunity to meet people, to connect with people, and to really find what makes you tick.
And one of the things that I think is really interesting about you is you're really, really transparent about your own background, your own life. And you have managed to turn your own personal tragedies and personal experience into an expression from a business perspective and integrate all these together. So I know we had talked earlier before we began recording about your year of tragedy. Mm-hmm. So let's start there and we're going to work up.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've really tried to, over the years, tune in and see how my life has unfolded and all of the events of it being for my benefit. And so certainly they're not all fun. There's some tough times. And as you mentioned, there was a year just a few years ago where I had a number of things around me, tragic things around me happen that really kind of opened me up even further and validated some thoughts that I was starting to wrestle with to begin with. Specifically, I had a friend who died in a plane crash. He was piloting a plane, and he and his entire family were on board. And seeing that firsthand, experiencing what it was like to be at their memorial service for an entire family was something that seared me and that I'll never forget. And not long after that, I had a very good friend of mine whose son passed away very unexpectedly, very tragically, and had spent the last few days of his life on life support. And my wife and I and our friends were bedside with them, and seeing that up close really kind of connected me into something much deeper, much more spiritual, much more purposeful. And I had another very dear friend of mine who got sick with brain cancer, young guy, unexpected. And thank God he is alive and well. But those three events all happening within a year really did, as I said, start to open me up and really make me think about life and what we're doing here and how I really wanted to spend mine.
And how did that end up translating into how you approach business, gravity, think about integrating a balanced work life together? And then that became an expression, and it's evolved into that over time. How did that all come together?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been kind of playing with this idea going back to before I founded Kaufman Development, about how we can really integrate our personal lives and our work lives into one. That this idea of going to work every day and living for weekends or vacations or retirement was just not something that I was personally comfortable with. I grew up in an environment where that was what everybody did, including my first jobs in banking. There was not a lot of inspiration and purpose and real passion, including into, my kind of early career and all of my career up until starting Kaufman Development. But I was exposed to a number of things that really kind of opened my eyes as to what was possible, and, really became convicted that there was another way to do it, that you could actually be passionate about what you did. You could bring in things that look like hobbies into your work. And that for us in particular, that if we could allow a space for other people to more easily access the things they were passionate about. So where they lived and where they worked, if they didn't have to go far, for example, to do volunteer activities or to learn about something, to go to an event, to hear a speaker, to join a club, to go take a fitness class, you name it. There was a million ways to do that. If we could create that, it would be our passion. And if we could bring it to other people, it would more easily connect them to their passion. So that was really at the heart of what was kind of coming out of me, what was feeling very purpose-driven to me. And then I had these kind of events happen, and there was a number of other events, but that year in particular really got me to say, I've got to do this. I've got to spend my life being of purpose, and I'm really going to go all in on that, which has opened up some new doors, not just gravity, but really how I can expand that passion for really helping other human beings.
Yeah, and I think that's a great place to move from here, because Gravity is now a podcast. It's soon to be a book. It's also a speech, and it's your entire personal brand. And now you've been advising and coaching and working with other executives. And one of the things that I know you do is you go through something you call discovery, and you've developed 82 questions that you have people answer in order to really go deep and help them do what you've done, which is really build and create a fully integrated life that is balanced. So why don't you talk a little bit about the process and those questions?
Yeah, so it's actually something that was shared with me, and most of what I'm doing, which is something I'm very open about and believe is really kind of the way to do it, for me at least, has been given to me by other people. It's my own experience. And so I'm just taking these little pieces of my own experience and continuing to share them with the world as I'm learning them. Discovery is one of those things. It came to me through Built to Lead, which is a coaching platform that I still use that's been really beneficial to me in the past. But I've made it my own. And these questions, I really think, get people to start to look at what it is that they believe. And in most cases, what it is that they're not sure that they believe, or they don't know what they believe. And so it really gets people to start to think about the big questions. First of all, it's 82 questions. So if you're going to really care about designing your life the way that you really want it to be, you're going to have to commit to filling out 82 questions. Right there, that sometimes weeds people out. There's a lot of people that just say, it's a little hard. They prioritize other things. They don't really want to look at these big kind of questions like, what do you fear? What motivates you? What do you care about? What are you worried about? What keeps you from being the person you want to be? What do you believe about death, about God? What are your spiritual beliefs? What are your relationships like? What, do you want to create for the rest of your life? There's, a lot there that really gets people to start to say, here's what I know, here's what I don't know. And in some cases, it's challenging. It can be very challenging, but very illuminating too. And so that's really where we start to see what are the gaps, what are the integrity gaps here. What is it that we can actually start to work on together? And so, we use this as a basis to begin the work.
Well, you just mentioned integrity gaps. So why don't you talk a little bit about what specifically that is and why that is so important and valuable as a business leader and an executive?
Yeah, to me, being integrity isn't so much about honesty and truthfulness. And of course, it's those things, but it's mostly about what do you know about yourself? What do you believe about the world? What is your worldview? And how are you acting in integrity with those views and beliefs? And so if you don't know, when you get to one of those questions where you're just not sure, you don't know what you believe, you might think something, you might not like it, there's some sort of gap in the belief. That's where we start to say, okay, there's a gap there that we want to tighten up. We want to make sure that you've got this strong core, this strong set of beliefs, so that when anything comes your way, good, bad, or otherwise, you know exactly how to act in alignment, in integrity with your view of the world.
Now, when you're working with executives as an advisor and a coach, and you've gone through the discovery process, you start helping people realize where their integrity gaps are. You also have a 3-step process that you talk about: awakening, alignment, and expansion. So why don't you talk a little bit about that process and how you've used it in your own life?
Sure. So, I think that there's this traumatic childhood, society-driven kind of first part of our life where we're generally unconscious. We're born pure. Life happens to us. In my case, I grew up in a house that was very chaotic. My father was an addict. There was abuse, divorce. It was an environment that allowed me to take on a number of my own beliefs, and I'm not alone. These things are common, especially in entrepreneurs. You see it quite a bit. It might be not enough. There's doubt, there's fear, there's worry, there's insecurity. There's a lot of things that get attached from being in that kind of a traumatic atmosphere. And it might be something a lot more simple for other people. It doesn't have to be a trauma like capital T trauma. It might be little t. It might be somebody did this on the playground. These things kind of get attached to us. And that's the unconscious part of our life. So as we start to wake up, which is the awakening part, that's where we start to get into asking these questions and writing what it is we believe, or discovering what it is we believe, and really starting to connect back into this pure version that we were actually born and meant to be.
And what are some of the core tools, resources, and organizations that helped you through the awakening process? And can you give an example of one of the core traumas that you were able to overcome as a result of using one of these or multiple tools, resources?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So for me, it probably started with meditation. So I learned transcendental meditation. I randomly, and I don't believe anything's random, but I saw a flyer on a telephone pole walking around my college campus and went to an introduction session. This was not something that I had friends doing 20 years ago. It wasn't what it is today. People weren't talking about meditation. I didn't have a peer group, any family. I just got kind of a little nudge from the universe that meditation might be something that I was interested in. And I gave myself the gift of TM when I graduated from college. It took me a few years to get the courage to spend I think it was $500 at the time to learn. And it's really been an enormous tool that's allowed me over the years to connect into that true self. And there's been other things. So Landmark Forum was a big part of that awakening process for me. Built to Lead, as I mentioned, finding a coach, not knowing what a coach was. That wasn't also something that was mainstream when I first started working with them. Summit Series is another one that came to me very randomly, but beautifully and perfectly on time, opened my eyes to what it looked like to be an entrepreneur, to be purpose-driven, to do things that were expansive, disruptive. It was kind of those three things in particular that really happened at the same time that were kind of the beginning of this awakening process for me.
Great. And then from there, you move on into alignment. And one of the things that you had told me earlier on was the T-shirt story. So why don't you describe the T-shirt story and how that entered into the alignment?
Yes. So a friend of mine is in the T-shirt business, and I have been doing some coaching with him, some work with him, and I was walking down the street with a totally unrelated friend of mine, and he said, if you were to put 3 words on a T-shirt, what would they be? First thing that comes up. And so I took a deep breath and said, love, trust, surrender. And next thing you know, a few weeks go by and a FedEx package lands at my office. I open it up and there's a T-shirt that says love, trust, surrender. Sure enough, my buddy that I've been helping out and that was in the business had put my other friend up to it and sent me the T-shirt. And I like those 3 words a lot. Kind of getting into the alignment. I think that there has been a learning for me, which really is driven by love. It's driven by loving everybody and everything, a belief that everything is perfect for what it is and what it's not, and that all we really can do and all that really matters is how we love ourselves and love other people and love the world. And then trust that is all happening as it's meant to be, and surrender to it. Be in the flow, let it happen, and really connect into it and enjoy it and be with it all, surrender to it all. So those 3 words, I think, really guide me. The alignment, goes beyond that. Alignment is about how we integrate, how we start to take this awakening, these tools, and we start to put them into action. And I think this is really a key part, because a lot of people open up, they awaken, but how we move into being in action with what is truly inside of us, that's where the alignment starts to really become powerful. And there's a lot of tools and ways that we go about doing that.
Right. So that leads us to the expansion. And in your particular case, what's really interesting about you is you've come from a challenging, difficult beginning, your childhood. And if you fast forward, you went through multiple careers, and that led you to building Gravity and engineering a new business model that's extremely progressive. And you're implementing this. It's like Gravity is not only self-expression for you, but it's the result of decades of your own personal development. And here you've got Gravity, Kaufman Development, and now your personal brand. So from an expansive perspective, you've done it and you lead other people through this. So can you talk a little bit about expansion?
Yeah, expansion's really the fun part, and certainly nothing's totally up and to the right, so it can be bumpy. But what starts to happen when you're awake and you're aligned and you're acting, you're in action with who you truly are, that kind of deep part, in your heart, in your soul, connected to the universe, to God, whatever you believe. When you are lit up and really embodying all of that, that's where you start to see things happen. And that's the expansion. And that's what's been happening for me. So taking the jump to start the company based on this belief on how I could have an impact in the world, being me, being fully expressed, and having that lead to Gravity, this full expression of our work in this community, and then seeing how we can share that message, how we can expand that work outside of the context of a real estate development. And so that's where I've really started to shift and do this podcast, get people to share their stories, their journeys, get people to see themselves in our guest. Powerful learning to hear very successful people sharing their journey, all of it. For the viewer, for the listener, for them to really be able to see themselves, I think is really inspiring and really profound. And the coaching, the one-on-one work, I love seeing executives, friends, creatives, anybody really tap into who they are. I think this is how we change the world. And we're investing in these entrepreneurs, we're investing in companies, we're starting companies. And I'm out there talking about it because it's a personal brand. Maybe I don't love that language. What, I'm really just doing is trying to figure out, again, how it all ties back to the human experience. I want to share my journey. I want to share other people's journey. I want to share our experience so that other people can learn from it, maybe smooth it out a bit and get what they want out of life, which I believe makes the world a better place.
That's great, because what I really see in you is you're about self-replication at this point. You've achieved a tremendous amount of personal and professional success. You're seeing your own patterns, your ability to guide other people through a process now. And in developing and creating the new podcast, I really want to get back to this, what you're doing with executives. So who's a right fit for your podcast, and who are the right kind of clients that you want to take on and guide them through this process so they can achieve their next highest level of conscious commitment, community building, and transformation?
Sure. Great question. So, really what we do is kind of run people through a filter, and that filter it's loose, but it has to be clear that they care about other people and they care about making the world a better place. And I believe everybody has a story. Our journeys are all happening, but generally there's some sort of opening. They're really open to not only how they can make an impact, but how they can personally grow and really continue to become more of who they are, more of who they want to be. So we're looking for generally entrepreneurs that have had, for the podcast, a success story of some kind. They might be in it. It could be early. It could be late. We're talking to people in all aspects of their lives, but they've overcome and they're in it and they're doing it, or they've done it and they've got something of real value to share with the audience. And I find that almost everybody qualifies for that. We're all having this human experience, and there's so many people out there with really rich stories that, I continue to find and love. And as far as the coaching piece goes, it's somebody that, again, is probably a little earlier on. They have an idea, they have a business. It could be in a variety of stages, but they're early. And some of our clients, some of the people I'm working with, have had massive successes. So it's not so much about being early in the business. It's this idea about shifting into something that feels a lot more awake, aligned, and expansive.
Great. Now you're also speaking, and you've spoken at organizations like EO and YPO and others. And I know you've got a large Chamber of Commerce upcoming opportunity, and you're potentially going to be speaking at Summit as well. So why don't you talk a little bit about what your speech is all about, and what kind of journey you take the audience on in your speech?
Sure. So really what I'm doing is just sharing my life experience, but I'm doing it, I think, in a way that helps connect the dots for other people. So you can see exactly what I've said, how the trauma set in, what that path that led me on, what path that could have continued me on, which was not a great one, but then the moments along the way that really nudged me, shifted me, and allowed me to do what I'm doing now. And it's my own awakening. It's my own unconscious first half of my life, my own awakening, my own alignment, and my own expansion. And I think it allows people to not only see themselves, but to see what's possible, to see the perfection in the universe and in our own individual lives, how we're all connected. And hopefully gets people to start to think about how they can, again, shift and awake and align and expand their own lives.
Yeah, it really is. I've had the good fortune of seeing a preview of it, and there's a great journey of hope and transformation that is embedded inside the presentation. So certainly for anyone watching, listening to us, contact Brett about having him come speak to your organization. And that brings me to, now obviously people can go subscribe to your podcast, which is Gravity with Brett Kaufman, but how do people find out more about you, get in contact with you about coaching, advising, booking you as a speaker, beyond subscribing to your podcast? Where should they go?
Sure. So brettkaufman.com is where you can find all the personal work that I'm doing. gravityproject.com, livekaufman.com. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and would love to connect with your audience and continue to try to be of service.
Great. Well, thank you so much. It's been super fun learning about your journey, and I know everyone who's listening and watching and reading is going to get a lot out of it as well. Thank you, Brett.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike.